Welcome to a Tuesday HQ Spotlight alongside Haley Sutton. I'm Tommy Tran. We have a lot to get to over the next 2 hours, but we do start the show with the NFL post-Super Bowl.
I feel like one of the best traditions in sports is announcing that you're going to go to Disneyland or Disney World after and then pulling up. It's been so fun to see Sam Darnold, Kenneth Walker, all the guys out there celebrating as the Seahawks, you mentioned it, are our Super Bowl champions. And those celebrations are going to continue, guys. We got a parade coming up later this week.
Earned it, huh?
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. I mentioned it. They're at Disneyland. We got that parade coming, but the front office maybe not having as much fun. Those celebrations may be shorter lived because they've got a laundry list of free agents to decide on if they're going to keep the band back together. Names like Rick Woolen, Kenneth Walker, Raheem Shaheed, Kobe Bryant, a list of some of those free agents they're going to have to make some choices on. If you take a look here at how the rest of the division will stack up when it comes to the draft, obviously the Seahawks will pick last because they won the Super Bowl. They're the last team standing. The Cardinals will pick the highest of this division. They're third. It reminds me, Tommy, of that meme. I don't know if you've seen it, the three-headed dragon, where it's like a scary dragon, and then a goofy one. Yeah. That's the Cardinals in this division. So they've got some work to do there. The Rams also have a couple of picks thanks to the Falcons, and the 49ers certainly surprising a lot of people. So let's break down what the offseason will look like. Plenty of things on that checklist when it comes to the NFL. So let's see if we can fill in those roster gaps. We've got our duo of Ryan Wilson and John Breech joining us. Breech is going to give us the team's biggest free agency needs, and Ryan's going to dive into his draft notes bag there and give us a scouting report for some of those prospects in terms of best fit. So we're going to start in the NFC West. We just showed you all the picks, and we'll pick up the conversation, Ryan, with the defending champs here. What's the biggest draft need to address for Mike Macdonald's Seahawks?
Haley, good to see you in Breech. I don't know if they have any needs the way they're currently constituted. They have a ton of cap space. They are in fantastic position. Sam Darnold's not even a concern because, as you noted, he's going to Disneyland. But if we're going to pick nits here, at the bottom of the first round, they could focus on cornerback because you mentioned Rick Woolen and Josh Jobe are going to be free agents. We'll see what their future looks like in Seattle. But they could target someone like Colton Hood, the Tennessee cornerback, who is strong, physical, had a really good Senior Bowl, and that came on the heels of a great season for him. In Tennessee, he has a chance to be a first-round pick along with his running mate who didn't play this year because of an ACL, cornerback Gerard McCoy. And also, if you're trying to get a wide receiver, you mentioned Rashid Shaheed. They'll get Torrey Horton back, of course. Denzel Boston might be an option here. 6'4", can run for days. He would be sort of a DK Metcalf replacement with a little bit more versatility. But these are two options for a team, in which case the rich would definitely be getting richer. Great problems to have if you're a Seahawks fan.
Yeah, Ryan, I'm glad you went with the defensive side of the ball to start because, look, their whole secondary, not their whole secondary, they've got quite a few defensive players that are set to be free agents. And as you said, they can look to fill a couple of those holes in the draft. When they actually get to free agency, I think a couple positions they need to target. Number one, they need to find a wide receiver, too. They need to find someone who can play behind Jackson Smith and Jigba. We saw how fantastic of a season he had. He led the NFL in receiving yards. But then you saw in the Super Bowl, when you don't have a strong number two guy, the defense kind of take him out of the game. He didn't put up huge numbers. We saw Cooper Kupp make a couple big catches, but I'm not sure that is the guy you want to be depending on as your number two guy. There's also Rashid Shaheed, who is set to be a free agent. I think that the Seahawks should think about re-signing him because it's not just that he plays receiver. He also has another element to his game with his ability to return punts, return kickoffs. And the one other place I'd look for the Seahawks is the interior offensive line. Maybe go out and try and sign a free agent center. That's not to say the offensive line was bad this year because obviously they just won the Super Bowl. But Todd Linderbaum's out there. You don't usually have a big name like that. The Ravens center, a multi-time Pro Bowler, one of the best in the business. Guys like that don't usually become available. John Schneider is one of the smartest GMs in the game. I'm sure he'll check in. And as you said, Wilson, no matter what happens this offseason, this just feels like the rich getting richer with the Seahawks. Yeah,
we're just nitpicking at this point. When you're the winners, you kind of have to be held to a different standard. By the way, just 7 points across 3 games separated the defending champs and the Los Angeles Rams this year the 3 times that they met. MVP Matthew Stafford coming up just short from another Super Bowl run. Breech, he made it very clear at NFL Honors that he plans to return, but what else in free agency does he need around him to make sure he can get back to that big game?
Well, I think when you look at what the Rams did during the regular season and into the playoffs, their offense was not the problem. I mean, they were the one team that was able to light up that Seahawks defense. Matthew Stafford had a lot of success against them, something that really no other quarterback in the NFL could say this year. So I think when the Rams get to free agency, they're going to want to look to beef up the defensive side of the ball, and specifically, I'm talking about cornerback. And so there are a lot of interesting options out there. You're looking at Kansas City's Jalen Watson, Jamel Dean down in Tampa Bay. So it's not often. This might be one of the deepest classes of free agency when you look at corner. So if the Rams are going to sign someone and beef up their secondary, that feels like the position they need to go after first, because you look around the rest of that division, whether it's the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan's passing game, you have Jackson Smith and Jigba in Seattle. You need to have some top-tier corners, so that's where the Rams should focus in free agency.
Haley, Breech is our special teams correspondent. I thought this would be all kickers and punters. Not yet, so we'll see how the rest of this division plays out. But he's exactly right. Cornerback is a great place to start if you're the LA Rams, because offensively with Matthew Stafford, we know exactly who they are. I had him go with Mansur Delane, the Virginia Tech transfer, who absolutely destroyed it at LSU. Not one of the few bright spots, but a handful of bright spots for a team that was certainly disappointing. Physical cornerback that can play outside, and he's going to be a day one starter, probably a top 15 pick. So the Rams have to use their first round pick on that. And then let's get saucy with a day 2, maybe a day 3 pick. What about Cade Klubnik? What about him sitting and learning behind Matthew Stafford? Should he play a year or two? Klubnik's season didn't go like he wanted to in 2025 at Clemson. But Haley, what's the best recipe for a quarterback who's struggled? Put him on a good team. Ask Matthew Stafford. I think Cade Klubnik can learn a lot by watching Matthew Stafford and learning from Sean McVay and pull a Sam Darnold 2.0 should his time come.
Yeah, not a bad role model to be learning for than the MVP. I don't hate it, Ryan Wilson. I don't hate it. This is why we pay you the big bucks. Let's move on and talk about the San Francisco 49ers. Kind of the surprise of the season after all of those injuries, and so it's hard to kind of imagine what they would actually be capable of if they were at full strength this year. So, Ryan, how do we get them there? How do the 49ers address the draft?
I don't want to talk about the electrical substation situation. Breech was out there for the Super Bowl. So if his hair starts falling out, we can ask some questions then. That aside, fingers crossed, you got to stay healthy. Other than that, they just have a few tweaks they need to do after they're healthy, because they won double-digit games with a ragtag bunch of guys who were, on one leg at times. So you start on the offensive line. I think someone like Vega Ione, the guard out of Penn State, would come in right away and be a day one starter. Spencer Burford, his contract is going to be up. They drafted Dominic Pooney, the left guard, a few years ago, and he's been pretty good as well. So that's the place to start, to keep Brock Purdy / Mac Jones upright, to keep them out there on the field longer. And then, speaking of health, Haley, the two healthy tight ends on this roster right now, Luke Farrell and Braden Willis. Not anyone named George Kittle, not yet. So Kenyon Sadiq, if he's there at the bottom of round 1, ooh, boy, he makes a ton of sense, because we know what he can do as a receiver. He's a fantastic blocker. He's really good on special teams. So he feels like a Kyle Shanahan sort of player because of his versatility, athleticism, and obviously playmaking ability.
Ryan, I would just have you know that I did my homework before I went out to the Bay Area. I stayed 250 yards away from that electrical substation at all times. So now the hair's falling out, buddy. But with the 49ers, let's look at their free agency real quick and what they should do and convince people to come and practice next to that substation. Number one, this team has to add some pass rushers. You guys want a fun fact? Myles Garrett, a player, had more sacks this season than the 49ers, a team. That is how bad the 49ers were at rushing the passer. Only 20 sacks on the year. That was the fewest in the NFL. You have to get help there, because that is something you have to be able to do to win in today's NFL. You have to get after the quarterback. I know that Nick Bosa was dealing with some injuries. He will be back next season. And one interesting free agent they could go after, his brother Joey. I think a lot of people connected those dots when Joey was a free agent last year. And, of course, he ended up in Buffalo. But there are some big names out there. Trey Hendrickson, Khalil Mack. We're talking about older guys who are going to want to play for a successful team to give them their best shot at winning a Super Bowl. And then if you have any money left over after getting a pass rusher, because they're expensive, you got to find a receiver. And I think Kyle Shanahan's good at that, finding guys that can fit his system. But you got to also find a guy who wants to play for the team. I'm looking at you, Brandon Ayuk. So the 49ers have had the right guys. They drafted Ricky Pearsall. They had Brandon Ayuk, but it just hasn't worked out for them. So they need to find somebody in free agency that fits Shanahan's offense.
It feels like the way we're talking about San Francisco right now is like Area 51, like all of the electrical out there, like it's doing some weird things. So I don't know. I'm kind of into it. Let's wrap up our conversation, guys, with, of course, the Arizona Cardinals. I mentioned to Tommy earlier that three-headed dragon dragon meme where the Cardinals are kind of just the ones standing out there with their tongues sticking out. Obviously, Breech here, my attention goes to the quarterback spot. We still don't really know what's going to happen with Kyler Murray. Is that an issue you solve in free agency?
To me, that's the number one issue they have to solve, whether it's free agency, whether it's a trade, whether it's the draft. It's hard to plan the rest of your offseason without knowing who your quarterback is going to be, especially you just hired a new head coach, Mike LaFleur, so you have an offensive-minded coach. You look at where he's been the past few years, and that's in Los Angeles with the Rams and Sean McVay, where he's kind of watched this offense be run successfully by Matthew Stafford, this classic pocket passer. And so I wouldn't be surprised if LaFleur goes around, looks for someone like that. Maybe he calls up Sean McVay and says, hey, you know, Jimmy Garoppolo, do you need him anymore? Because Matt is looking pretty healthy. Maybe send him to Arizona, but there are quite a few quarterbacks. Kirk Cousins will probably end up being available. Joe Flacco, maybe for a year until you can find someone in the draft or develop someone to be kind of be your quarterback of the future. But I would be surprised if Kyler Murray is there in 2026. This really feels like the offseason where the Cardinals are going to have to find a quarterback that Mike LaFleur is comfortable with.
Haley, I think we went back to 2017 talking about all these quarterbacks and what they could possibly bring in 2026, which tells you how dire the situation is in Arizona. They have the 3rd overall pick. Obviously, Fernando Mendoza isn't going to be there, so you're not going to take Ty Simpson that high. Instead of having them going with CeCe Malanoa, the right tackle out of Miami, they drafted Paris Johnson Jr. out of Ohio State a few years ago. So now you have your bookend tackles. Jonah Williams going to be a free agent, so they need help there. And then whoever the quarterback ends up being, at least you know you will be well protected. So that's going to be the starting point for Mike LaFleur. Fix the offensive line. We'll have to figure out the quarterback situation. You're not going to take one in the first round. If you don't take a QB in the first round, you probably don't want to take one in the subsequent rounds if you're a bad football team. This isn't an LA Rams situation, for example. The other pick, which is certainly much sexier, take Jeremiah Love. Because you have Trey McBride, you have Marvin Harrison Jr. Now you have an electric threat in the backfield. James Conner was banged up last year, and he's obviously getting close to 30. So what you have in Jeremiah Love is what you got in Ashton Jeanty coming out of college, Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, and he brings versatility, excitement, and instant offense to a team that certainly struggled at times last year, mainly because they couldn't get the quarterback right.
Yeah, the good news is, like we both talked about, they have that pick at number 3, so there's some options of what they can do with it. They can trade, they can stash it, whatever it is. Fellas, sit tight. We've got plenty more to talk about with you on the other side. Before we do so, I want to give you the odds to win the NFC. Are you shocked to see the Seahawks at the top of this list? I'm not.
No.
But they do have the Rams, Tommy, kind of close
right behind them
there. And then way back there, what is that, like plus 10,000? The Arizona Cardinals.
Keep your money. Keep your money.
Save it.